Have you ever walked into a social gathering and felt something twist in your stomach? Not anxiety, not shyness, but something deeper. A profound exhaustion at the mere thought of putting on the performance everyone expects. The bright smile, the interested nods, the carefully calibrated responses that dance around what you really think. You look around and see everyone playing their parts so perfectly, and suddenly you feel like you're drowning in an ocean of pretense. If this resonates with you, if you've reached the point where social theatre feels not just tiresome, but almost physically repulsive, then what I'm about to share will illuminate something profound about your psychological evolution. The brilliant sociologist Goffman spent his career peeling back the layers of human social behavior, and what he discovered was revolutionary. In his groundbreaking work, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, Goffman revealed that we're all actors on a stage, constantly managing impressions and performing roles. He showed us that social life is literally theatre, complete with front stages, backstages, scripts, and audiences. But here's what Goffman uncovered that changes everything about how we understand social exhaustion. He discovered that some people reach a breaking point where they can no longer sustain the performance. It's not social anxiety or introversion. It's what happens when your authentic self starts rebelling against the constant acting. Before we dive deeper into this, let me ask you something. Have you noticed that certain social situations leave you feeling completely drained, even when nothing particularly dramatic happened? Maybe you spent an evening making small talk at a work event, smiling at the right moments, laughing at mediocre jokes, and went home feeling like something vital had been sucked out of you. That's exactly what Goffman predicted would happen to certain individuals as they mature psychologically. Today, I want to show you why your growing intolerance for social theatre isn't a character flaw. It's actually a sign of psychological evolution that most people never reach. If you're someone who's tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of social scripts that feel empty, then you're going to want to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're going to explore the deeper psychology behind authentic living and why some souls simply can't fake it anymore. Goffman identified what he called impression management, the constant work we do to create and maintain certain impressions of ourselves in others' minds. Think about it. Right now, as you're watching this, you present yourself differently to your boss than to your best friend, differently to your parents than to strangers. We all have what Goffman called multiple selves that we deploy strategically. For most people, this impression management is unconscious and relatively effortless. They've internalized society's scripts so completely that performing them feels natural. But Goffman observed something fascinating. There's a subset of people for whom this process becomes increasingly conscious and eventually unbearable. Let me paint a picture you'll recognize. You're at dinner with acquaintances, and someone starts complaining about their job. The socially acceptable response is sympathetic nodding, maybe some commiserating remarks. But inside you're thinking, you've been complaining about the same problems for 2 years without changing anything. The gap between what you're expected to say and what you actually think creates a kind of psychic friction that's becoming harder to bear. This is what I call performance breakdown, and Goffman predicted it. When people develop what he termed role distance, the ability to see their social roles as performances rather than identities, they often struggle to maintain those performances with the same conviction. The first sign you're experiencing this breakdown is what Goffman would call backstage bleeding. Your backstage self, the real you that exists when no one's watching, starts intruding into your front stage performances. You find yourself being more honest than the situation calls for, expressing opinions that don't match your social role, or simply being unable to fake enthusiasm for things that bore you. This isn't rudeness. According to Goffman's framework, it's what happens when someone's authentic self becomes too integrated to compartmentalize effectively. Your various social masks are losing their adhesive power. The second sign is energy dysregulation around performance. Goffman noted that all social interaction requires what he called emotional labor, the work of managing not just what we say, but how we appear to feel. Some conversations energize you because they require minimal performance. Others drain you completely because they demand constant emotional regulation. You start noticing the difference between interactions where you can be genuine and those where you have to perform. A 5-minute, authentic conversation with someone who sees you clearly can leave you feeling more alive than a 3-hour social event where you never dropped your mask. The third sign is what Goffman called cynical performer syndrome. You become increasingly aware of your own performances and those of others. You can spot fake laughter from across the room. You notice when someone's concern seems calculated, when their enthusiasm feels manufactured, when their interest appears strategic. This awareness can be isolating because you realize how much of social interaction is mutual performance. Everyone's putting on a show for everyone else, and you're standing there increasingly unable to participate in the elaborate dance of impression management. But here's where Goffman's insights become liberating rather than depressing. He argued that recognizing the theatrical nature of social life doesn't make you cynical, it makes you more conscious. And consciousness, he believed, gives you choices that unconscious performers don't have. The fourth sign is selective authenticity. You find yourself increasingly unable to engage in what Goffman called face work, the careful management of social dignity and reputation that occupies so much of our social energy. Small talk becomes not just boring, but actively repulsive, because you can see through its function as social lubrication to its essential emptiness. You're not becoming antisocial. You're developing what Goffman might have called performance immunity. Your system has become so sensitive to inauthentic interaction that it rejects it automatically, the way a healthy immune system rejects foreign substances. The fifth sign is what I call script rejection. Goffman showed that most social situations come with predetermined scripts that tell us how to behave, what to say, even how to feel. Birthday parties have scripts. Work meetings have scripts. Dating has scripts. Family dinners have scripts. But you find yourself increasingly unable or unwilling to follow these scripts. When someone asks, "How are you?" the automatic "fine, thanks" sticks in your throat. When colleagues engage in ritualistic complaining, you can't bring yourself to join in. When friends gossip, you feel physically uncomfortable participating. This script rejection can make you feel like a social alien. But Goffman would say you're actually becoming more socially intelligent. You're seeing through the mechanics of social interaction to its underlying purposes, and you're making conscious choices about when and how to participate. Goffman observed that in every social interaction, there's a definition of the situation that everyone implicitly agrees upon. This definition determines what's appropriate to say, how to behave, what emotions to express. But when you're experiencing performance breakdown, you start questioning these definitions rather than unconsciously accepting them. Why do we pretend to be interested in conversations that bore us? Why do we laugh at jokes that aren't funny? Why do we express emotions we don't feel? Goffman would say these questions arise when someone's relationship to their social roles becomes critical rather than automatic. The sixth sign is presence sensitivity. Goffman distinguished between people who are genuinely present in interactions and those who are simply performing presence. Once you develop the ability to tell the difference, performative presence becomes almost unbearable. You can sense when someone is going through the motions of listening while actually waiting for their turn to speak. You can feel when someone's sympathy is genuine versus when it's socially required. You can tell when laughter is spontaneous versus when it's designed to manage social tension. This sensitivity to authentic versus performed presence creates a hunger for real connection that can't be satisfied by conventional social interaction. You'd rather spend an evening alone than in a room full of people who are all performing variations of themselves. But here's what's profound about Goffman's work. He didn't see this growing intolerance for performance as pathological. He saw it as evolutionary. Some people, he argued, develop beyond the need for constant impression management. They become what he might have called post-performative. The brutal truth is this: you can't stand social theatre anymore because your soul has outgrown the stage. You've experienced what authentic human connection feels like, and everything else tastes like cardboard. Your psyche has evolved beyond the need for external validation through social performance, and now anything less than genuine interaction feels like a betrayal of your essential self. Goffman's research revealed something most people never consider. The exhaustion you feel after performative social interactions isn't just introversion or social anxiety. It's the psychological cost of maintaining a split between your authentic self and your performed self. When that split becomes too wide, the energy required to maintain it becomes unsustainable. This is why you might feel physically ill before social events where you know you'll have to perform. Your body is responding to the anticipated psychological labor of being someone other than who you are. Your nervous system has learned to recognize the difference between authentic and performative environments, and it's trying to protect you from the latter. The seventh sign is what Goffman called role strain. This happens when the demands of your various social roles conflict with each other or with your authentic self. You might be expected to be enthusiastic at work, diplomatic with family, impressive on dates, and agreeable with friends. But maintaining all these different versions of yourself becomes like juggling knives blindfolded. Goffman observed that people experiencing severe role strain often go through a period of social withdrawal while they figure out how to integrate their various selves or decide which roles they're willing to abandon. This isn't antisocial behavior, it's psychological self-preservation. But there's something else Goffman discovered that will blow your mind. He found that people who develop this intolerance for social performance often go through what he called dramaturgical discipline breakdown. This is when you lose the ability to maintain what he termed expressive control during social interactions. You know that feeling when you're in a meeting and someone says something ridiculous and you can't quite manage the poker face anymore, or when someone tells a story you've heard 5 times and you can't fake fascination like you used to. That's your dramaturgical discipline breaking down, and Goffman saw this as a natural progression for psychologically mature individuals. Here's what's fascinating. Goffman observed that this breakdown often happens in stages. First, you become conscious of your own performances. Then, you become hypersensitive to others' performances. Finally, you lose the motivation to maintain performances that don't serve your authentic self-expression. This progression can feel destabilizing because so much of social life depends on everyone agreeing to maintain certain illusions. When you stop participating in these collective performances, it can disrupt the entire social dynamic of a group. People might accuse you of being negative, difficult, or changed when really you've just stopped pretending. But Goffman believed this disruption serves a crucial social function. He argued that individuals who refuse to participate in inauthentic social dynamics force groups to either elevate their level of genuine interaction or reveal their commitment to superficiality. You become what he might have called an authenticity catalyst. The final sign is what I call authenticity gravity. Just as objects with greater mass exert stronger gravitational pull, people who have developed authentic presence tend to attract others who are hungry for real connection, while repelling those who are committed to performance. You might notice that your social circle is changing. People who thrive on drama, gossip, or superficial interaction start feeling uncomfortable around you. Meanwhile, you start attracting people who value depth, honesty, and genuine connection. Goffman would say, you're creating what he called a focused gathering, a social space where authentic interaction is not just possible, but expected. Here's what Goffman understood that most people miss. The theatre of social life serves a purpose, but it's not the only way humans can relate to each other. There are forms of interaction that transcend performance, moments when people connect not through their social roles, but through their essential humanity. These moments of authentic connection are rare, but they're incredibly nourishing. One genuine conversation can sustain you emotionally for weeks, while hours of performative social interaction leave you feeling empty. Once you've experienced this kind of connection, everything else seems like junk food for the soul. The reason you can't tolerate social theatre anymore isn't because you've become antisocial or difficult. According to Goffman's framework, it's because you've evolved beyond the psychological need for constant impression management. You've developed what he might have called performance sovereignty, the ability to choose when and how to engage in social roles, rather than being unconsciously driven by them. This evolution comes with costs. You might be seen as difficult by people who depend on social performance for their sense of identity. You might feel lonely in crowds because you can see through everyone's masks to their essential loneliness. You might struggle with social situations that once felt effortless because you can no longer unconsciously participate in collective But Goffman believed that this evolution also comes with profound gifts. People who have transcended the need for constant performance often become what he called wise, individuals who can see through social facades to the human reality underneath. They become capable of offering the kind of authentic presence that others desperately crave but rarely experience. Your growing intolerance for social theatre isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something is finally right. Your authentic self is strong enough now to refuse compromise. Your inner compass is calibrated to truth rather than social acceptance. Your energy is too precious to waste on performances that nourish no one. In a world where most people are starving for authentic connection while simultaneously avoiding it, your refusal to participate in social theatre serves a vital function. You become a beacon for others who are ready to drop their own masks. You create space for real conversation in a world of small talk. You model what it looks like to be genuinely yourself in a culture that rewards performance over presence. The most profound insight from Goffman's work is this: your growing intolerance for social theatre isn't just personal evolution, it's social evolution. You're helping to raise the collective standard for what genuine human connection looks like, one authentic interaction at a time. Goffman's work shows us that the choice isn't between being social and being antisocial. It's between being authentically social and performatively social. And once you've tasted authentic connection, once you've experienced what it's like to be seen and accepted for who you really are, rather than who you pretend to be, there's no going back to the theatre. The brutal reason you can't stand social theatre anymore is simple. Your soul has remembered what it's like to be real with another human being. And once you remember that, everything else is just a pale imitation of what human connection can be.